Hi, everybody. This is Lee, and this Black Girl Magic video is about Fannie Lou Hamer. She was a civil rights activist. She was called the spirit of the civil rights movement. She was born a sharecropper in Mississippi, and she worked from the age of 6 as a timekeeper on a cotton plantation. She became involved with the Black freedom struggle and moved on to become a field secretary for the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, or SNCC. And so she was born in 1917, and she was born in Mississippi. She married in 1942 and adopted 2 children. The reason why she adopted is that she received a Mississippi appendectomy, also known as a hysterectomy, without permission. So she had a Mississippi appendectomy and then adopted 2 children. So she worked with her husband on a plantation, first as a field worker, then a timekeeper. She attended meetings of the Regional Council of Negro Leadership, where speakers addressed issues of self-help, civil rights, and voting rights. And so this is where the racial issues meet economic issues, which at that time in the South intersected. There are some people who feel that they should be addressed separately, like one or the other, and that they are mutually exclusive. If you are part of this identity, then economic struggles always meet racial identity. They don't exclude each other, they intersect always. And so, since Fannie Lou Hamer is a woman, those issues also intersect. It's not a separate issue. And I think it's important for people to realize that, because there are some who are very offended and turned off when women's issues meet economic issues and then racial issues. For Black women, this is the reality that they face. And so, whether it makes other people feel uncomfortable, it is a reality. I mean, it is what it is. And so for Fannie Lou Hamer, that was her reality. She volunteered to work with SNCC in 1962, registering Black voters in the South. For her involvement with the effort to register Black people to vote at that time in the South, she and the rest of her family lost their jobs because of that involvement with that effort. Intersection. And so that's when SNCC hired her as a field secretary. And so she was able to register herself to vote in 1963 by passing the literacy test. And then she taught other people how to beat the literacy test in her organizing work. And she sang a lot. She sang as a type of encouragement to herself and to others, like songs like This Little Light of Mine and others. And so she helped to organize the 1964 Freedom Summer in Mississippi. That was sponsored by SNCC, Southern Christian Leadership Council Conference, SCLC, and the Congress of Racial Equality, CORE, and the NAACP. And so she was actually charged with disorderly conduct for failing or refusing to recognize whites only policy in a restaurant. And she was taken to jail and beaten so badly, and then refused medical treatment, she became permanently disabled as a result. And so, because African Americans were excluded from the Mississippi Democratic Party, she founded the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party. And so they sent an alternate delegation to the 1964 Democratic National Convention. And then there, Fannie Lou Hamer testified to the convention's Credentials Committee about the violence and discrimination faced by Black voters trying to register to vote. And her testimony was televised. There was some kind of compromise offered where two could be seated. And then she refused that, saying, either we're all seated or none are seated. And so she passed on that offer. But in 1965, Lyndon B. Johnson signed the Voting Rights Act. And so she was a member of the Democratic National Committee for Mississippi from 1968 to 71. And she actually filed a lawsuit, Hamer versus Sunflower County, that was demanding school desegregation. She ran unsuccessfully for the Mississippi State Senate in 1971, but she ran successfully for the delegate to the Democratic National Convention of 1972. And so she also lectured, and then that's where people heard the line, "I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired." She was a very powerful speaker, and she had a very powerful singing voice. And that was her encouragement to those involved with the civil rights movement and the meetings. She brought a Head Start program to her community, and she formed something known as a pig bank. And I think that was a cooperative, like an agricultural cooperative in 1968. And she did that with the help of National Council of Negro Women. And then later she helped to found the Freedom Farm Cooperative in 1969. So she was actually involved with multiple racial type issues, but then also economic issues. She did double duty, and then she also did triple duty. She helped to found the National Women's Political Caucus in 1971, speaking for inclusion of racial issues in the feminist agenda. That's Fannie Lou Hamer. And so in 1972, the Mississippi House of Representatives passed a resolution honoring her national and state activism. And it passed 116 to 0. And so she did suffer from breast cancer, diabetes, and heart problems, and passed away in 1977. And she has her autobiography in 1967, To Praise Our Bridges, an autobiography, 1967. And then Jew Jordan wrote a biography of Fannie Lou Hamer in 1972. And then there's other works about her as well. And so you can find more information about her at the links. The organizations that she was involved in were the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC, National Council of Negro Women, Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party, National Women's Political Caucus, and then the agricultural cooperatives that she helped to found as well. So this is a very dynamic woman whose organizational and activism intersected in three directions: on women's issues, on racial issues, and then also economic issues. She did triple duty, as many Black women do, in order to make their lives somewhat better than before and to improve the lives of others. Fannie Lou Hamer was Black girl magic.